What if I told you there was a technology that could completely change healthcare as we know it? A single device that could run hundreds of tests, from cancer screenings to cholesterol checks, all from one tiny painless drop of blood. The idea was so simple, yet so powerful. It was a promise to give everyone control over their own health information. And it all started with this one simple idea, that one tiny drop could change everything. Well, that incredible promise ended up at the center of one of the wildest financial thrillers of our time. This is the story of Theranos, a company that flew way too close to the sun and then came down in a spectacular, fiery crash of scandal and lies. So let's unpack how this world-changing idea turned into one of Silicon Valley's biggest warnings. All right, so every legendary Silicon Valley tale has to have a visionary founder, right? And boy, did this one have the perfect star, Elizabeth Holmes. At just 19 years old, she drops out of Stanford with this huge idea and a charisma that was just off the charts. Her mission? To completely blow up the $75 billion a year blood testing industry. And it all supposedly started because of a personal fear of her own. And this right here, this was the heart of it all. You see, Holmes hated needles, was terrified of them. Her solution was this little vial, the nanotainer. The whole idea was that their special little machine, called the Edison, could take this tiny bit of blood and bam, run a whole bunch of complex tests almost instantly. No more giant needles. No more waiting around for days to get your results. I mean, we're talking about the holy grail of medical testing. And honestly, the beginning sounds like something straight out of a movie. So, in 2003, she drops out of Stanford and starts the company. Just a year later, in 2004, she's already got $6 million in funding. People were hooked from day one. Then 2009 rolls around and a new major player enters the scene, Sunny Balwani. He becomes the president and COO, basically Holmes' right-hand man. And with him on board, things were about to get a whole lot bigger. Next up, building the empire. And when I say bigger, I mean massive. That promise? It wasn't just convincing. It was like a giant vacuum cleaner for money. Theranos started building this huge empire of cash, credibility, and partnerships that made them the envy of the entire tech world. And for years, they did all this in what's called stealth mode, super secretive, which, just made everyone want to know more. The hype was insane. Okay, the amount of cash they pulled in is just mind-blowing. Look at this. By 2014, they'd raised over $750 million from some of the biggest names in venture capital. And listen, these weren't a bunch of newbies. We're talking about seasoned, smart investors who were absolutely mesmerized by the potential payout here. They thought they were getting in on the ground floor of a revolution. And all that belief, all that cash, it led to this number, $9 billion, with a B. That was the company's peak valuation. Holmes owned over half of it, making her, overnight, the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. She was everywhere. Fortune, Forbes, you name it. She was the Silicon Valley dream. So you've got this insane $9 billion valuation. How do you protect it? How do you make it seem absolutely bulletproof? Well, you assemble what some have called the most stacked board of directors maybe ever. I mean, look at this list. George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, James Mattis. These are heavy, heavy hitters from politics and the military. It was a genius move, really. It created the shield of credibility. I mean, if these guys are on board, the company has to be legit, right? And with that kind of credibility, the big money business deals started rolling in. You had Walgreens signing on in 2013 to put Theranos centers right in their stores. And then there was this huge kind of secret deal with Safeway. They dropped a whopping $350 million to build clinics in more than 800 of their supermarkets. This was it. The tech was about to go mainstream. The empire was built. All right, section 3, cracks in the foundation. But here's the thing. From the outside, Theranos looked like this impenetrable fortress. But on the inside, the whole thing was built on sand. What the public was being told and what was actually happening in the labs were two totally different stories. And the pressure to keep that secret was building. And that pressure had a real tragic human cost. Take Ian Gibbons. This guy was a brilliant scientist, one of the first key hires. He knew the technology was failing, and he was getting more and more frustrated with how the company was bearing the problems. He eventually told his wife, in total desperation, nothing at Theranos is working. It's just a tragic part of this story, but faced with being forced to testify about it all, he took his own life. So, what was the big secret? What wasn't working? Well, this is the core of it.
The pitch to everyone was that their magic box, the Edison, could run over 240 tests. The reality? Insiders said it could barely handle like a dozen tests, and even those were unreliable. So what were they doing for all the other tests? They were secretly using regular old lab equipment from other companies and just trying to make it work with their tiny blood samples.
And somehow, it gets even worse than that. A whistleblower named Erica Chung, who worked in the lab, came forward and said the Edison machines were just ridiculously inaccurate. We're talking failing quality control checks half the time. And when she brought this up, management basically told her to be quiet and process the patient samples anyway. Just think about that. Real people's health was on the line. Okay, let's talk about the journalist's gamble. You know, a secret this big can't stay hidden forever. But it was going to take someone really brave to blow the whistle. Someone willing to go up against a $9 billion behemoth with a board full of powerful people and an army of lawyers. And that someone was John Carreyrou. Now, this wasn't some rookie reporter. This guy was a 2-time Pulitzer winner at the Wall Street Journal, a total heavyweight. So in 2015, he gets a tip from someone who's suspicious about Theranos' tech, and he starts asking questions. Little did he know, he was about to kick the hornet's nest. And what followed was an all-out war. Carreyrou manages to find sources, like Erica Chung, who we mentioned, and another guy named Tyler Schultz, get this, the grandson of one of their own board members, George Schultz. Theranos went into full attack mode. Lawyers, threats, you name it. Holmes even went straight to the top, to Rupert Murdoch, who not only owned the Wall Street Journal, but was also a big investor in Theranos. She asked him to kill the story. He said no. And then in October 2015, boom, the article came out. Next section, the House of Cards. Carreyrou's article just blew the doors off the whole thing. The faulty tech, the secret use of other companies' machines, it was all out in the open. It was the first domino, and you better believe the rest came down fast. That whole $9 billion empire just collapsed. So remember that huge deal with Safeway? Yeah, that $350 million they spent? It was for nothing. The partnership was canceled. They had built this entire network of clinics in hundreds of supermarkets for a technology that didn't work, a ghost network that never saw a single patient. But the financial lies? Oh man, they were on another level. Look at this. In 2012 and 2013, they made $0. Nothing. Then in 2014, they told investors they were making $100 million. The real number? About 100,000. And they projected a $230 million profit for 2015, while they were actually just burning through cash like crazy. This wasn't faking it till you make it. This was just making it up. So what's the final bill for all this? Well, investors lost over $700 million. Just gone. Poof. Vaporized. We're talking about everyone from media billionaires to families who invested their entire fortunes. All right, last part, paying the price. So the company is in ruins. The lies are out there for everyone to see. There was only one thing left to do. It was time for the people behind it all to face the music. The first shoe to drop was in 2018. The SEC came after Holmes for massive fraud. She ended up settling. She had to pay a $500,000 fine, give up all her shares, give up control of the company, and was banned from being an officer at a public company for 10 years. Basically, her career as a CEO was over. But that was just the civil stuff. The criminal charges came next, and after these huge, dramatic trials, both Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani were found guilty of wire fraud. They were sentenced to actual federal prison time, 11 years for her, almost 13 for him. And Theranos, the $9 billion company, it officially dissolved in 2018. The end. So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, this whole thing leaves us with this giant question that still hangs over Silicon Valley. You know that whole fake it till you make it idea? It's practically a religion for startups. But the story of Theranos really makes you wonder, where's the line? When does faking it become, well, fraud? And maybe the scariest question of all is, how many other Theranoses are out there right now?